Welcome everyone to Raising Giants. I'm Nancy Radke, and I've been teaching for about 55 years, and I've gathered a lot of material during that time, material that I would like to pass on to you. This includes a program for teaching your 4-year-old how to read. A 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, they are learning so fast. I wouldn't start too much earlier. At about 3.5, they're still too young. So 4 is good age. So the goal of Raising Giants is to help your child grow into his fullest potential. You can let others raise them, such as babysitters or the school. And with the school especially, you don't know what you're going to get. You might have a good teacher one year and you go, oh, this is a fantastic school, my kid's learning so much. And then the next year, you'll get a teacher who is teaching them the wrong morality. It's not what you want them to learn. So the third choice is for you to do it. You can be their best teacher. So it's really neat if you start young and at around age 4, 5, 6, 7 still okay, but 4 is the easiest. They learn faster. So if you start around age 4, and while you're teaching your kids, you develop this rapport with them. It's just really something that's really neat. So you are their best teacher. And why can I say this? Well, I say you're their best teacher for the very reason that you've already taught them to tie their shoes. You've already taught them colors, I'm sure. You've taught them a language. You've taught them what's right and what's wrong as much as you can at that age. You've probably already taught them how to count. So, you are already teaching your child, so don't let these school teachers, administrators, educators come along and tell you that you can't teach your child. You're already doing it. You know your child and you have an advantage. You have a 1-to-1 situation. They have 25-to-1. So people will tell me, well, I don't know if I could teach my child to read because that's got to be difficult. Well, it really isn't. And as I've said before, the sooner you start, the easier it is for the child. Just by watching these videos, you can learn how to teach your child how to read. My brother was 3 years older than I, so when he was 7, he went to school, come back, and every night we would play school. For a short while, it wasn't very long, but we played school. And he taught me how to read. He didn't have anything but crayon and paper. And while we had school, I learned to read at the age of 4. When I went to school at the age of 7, I already knew how to read at about a 3rd grade level. I've done this before with my own children. By the time they went to school, especially my daughter, she read Black Beauty between kindergarten and 1st grade. And that was the chapter book. So it can be done. There's lots of people that have done it. I taught my grandchildren how to read using this same method. It's very, very simple. The kids get it very easily. First of all, we're going to look at some of the roadblocks that might get in the way of you successfully teaching your child. The first one is fear. There's a fear called, I'm not an expert, I wouldn't do it, I'd mess things all up. So the I'm no expert fear, my brother wasn't an expert. If a 7-year-old can teach a 4-year-old how to read, then I think that you probably could too. Now, if you make work out of it, it's going to be harder to teach. You need to always keep these fun. I want you to not try to keep to a schedule. Just do it whenever you and your child are rested and happy. You're not to force the learning. If you skip a week, that's fine. If you skip several days, that's fine. The child is, at this age, they learn so fast and so well that when you go back and pick up where you left off, you don't have to do much reviewing. They already remember. And the way this is set up, it sort of reviews it as you go along. So there's the fear, of course, of what if I mess up? Well, you taught this child a foreign language already. I mean, children are not born with their language. I know a young man I was talking to one time. His grandmother spoke German, his grandfather spoke French, his mother spoke Spanish, and his father spoke English. And they all were in the same house, and he spoke the different languages to each one of the adults, and he thought that everyone had their own language. But anyway, he learned 4 languages as he was growing up and was then able to speak them all fluently. So if you've got someone that happens to have another language besides yours, encourage that person to talk to your child in their language because it doesn't mix them up. The other thing that you want to do is to make sure that you cut the lessons short. So never keep a lesson going until the child is tired and fidgeting. I tend to teach too long. And the best thing to do is to get your book, know what you're going to do, set the timer, and then go work with the child. Then when the timer goes off, say, oh, our time is up. Set it for 10, 15, or 20 minutes, depending on the child. If you have a real fidgety child, 10 minutes is enough. When I was teaching my 2 older boys how to read, my daughter was playing on the floor. She was 2.5 years younger than my youngest boy. So when I started to teach her, she pretty much already knew how to read. What was happening was, as she was playing around on the floor, she listened to what I was teaching them, and she just picked it up. You know, that's the same way that you taught your child how to speak English or whatever your language is. That's the way that they can learn to read. They just pick it up. So don't try to make these formal lessons. Make them a fun time. We're going to work on sounds. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And one of the things that we do is you work with clay. So I'll tell you what kind of clay and stuff to get at the end of this video. Another problem that people have is a time problem, but I think I might have already taken care of that. Let's say that you think, well, I need to do this every morning at 8:30 and I need to do it. No. You do it on your time. Don't keep to a schedule. Just find a time when you're rested, you and your kid. Maybe it's in the early afternoon. It might be right before they go to bed if they aren't too sleepy. They will just soak it in. They're like sponges. So anything is better than nothing. Just remember that. Any teaching on anything that you do for your child is better than nothing. One of the things that you might find out is that you teach something and you'll think, I better review it. So you go to review it and you think, well, he doesn't look like he's getting this at all. He's walking away from me. he's starting to go play games, what that means. When you're trying to teach a child, a very young child, and they start fidgeting and looking at other things, they're telling you in their own way with body language, I've already got this. What are you talking about this again for? I know this. This is especially important when you're teaching math and you think, well, they can't have this. Well, they do. Same with reading. Do it whenever. Don't worry about the time. The only thing that you need to worry about is if you make your lessons too long and if you review too often. I want your goal right at the very first here, that reading time, your child and you get a book, you sit down, they jump on your lap, they're all ready to go, they open the book and they start to read. And they're reading to you. You aren't reading to them. And as they read to you, my daughter, she loved to read, and she would read, and she would read, and I would finally fall asleep. So she was reading to me in the afternoons, and that's sort of drowsy time for me anyway. And so as I was sort of semi-listening to her, I would get this jab with her elbow in my ribs. Mom, what's this word? And I'd open my eyes long enough to say, oh, that's perpendicular. And then I'd explain what it means if it was some word that she wouldn't know otherwise. And then I'd go back to sleep. And she would sit there and keep reading until she got whatever stories read that she wanted to read, and then we were finished with her reading session. That's a little unusual, but it just shows you what can happen with your children. First of all, we're going to stop just long enough to look a little bit more at the time problem. Even if you're a single parent and working, you've got some hours off, and take a few minutes of those times, even if it's weekends, just take some of the time. And I'm going to show you why. Say that's the amount of time you spend now with your child teaching them. As they grow older, this amount of knowledge expands. It's bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Let's say that you were able to spend this much time with the child. Now, look at the expansion here. So the time that you spend teaching your child rhythm, reading, counting, simple math, all of these things at 4 years old, when they are a sponge and they just soak it in just as fast as you can give it to them, the bigger that you can make their base, the more growth that they're going to have as they get older. We've all heard about these little babies that were left in their cribs and their bases looked like this. And so they came out like this. You want to avoid that. So the more teaching, just random teaching, it multiplies as the child grows. Now, just the fact that you're watching this video means that you're willing to help your child. So we're going to start with simple reading program that you can do with your kids, and then we'll move into ways to help children who have special learning difficulties. And that's going to be in the next videos. One more thing about time. If you don't spend the time now, you're going to spend the time later. Usually, because this is what happens. The children go to school. You think they're going to learn to read at school. Well, they might learn to read at school, but they might not, because the teacher has so many children to work with. They're already 7 years old. They have this huge distraction all the time. And it's really a wonder that kids learn to read at all. And there are a lot of kids that graduate from high school and they don't know how to read their diploma. So you want to get that start. Now, the other thing about time is that the kids go to school, the teachers spends so much time on discipline and on taking attendance and on all this other stuff, that guess what? The kid brings home homework. And that's when you get to spend time with your child. You're tired. It's at the end of the day. Your child is tired. You have to have this thing done by the next day. You spend a lot of time at that age trying to teach your children. Whereas if you had done this at the early age, they don't bring much homework home. Now, if they're in advanced classes, yes, they might bring home homework. But the great thing about that is that these are the kids that get the scholarships. So we talk money, okay. Put a little bit of money in on some reading programs and things at this time, and you get the scholarships to college later on. Or you just turn out great kids. The first thing that I'm going to teach you for reading, because I told you I'm going to teach you reading, is the vowel sounds. The sounds are a, I, a. Now, you might say, okay, a, I, how long are you going to remember that? So I'm going to give you a way to remember that. This is not what you tell your children. They're just going to learn the a, I, a. But you have to remember it long enough to tell them. So you're the one that needs the crutch, okay? Ap, et, it, all up. Just think of the apple if you wish. Et, it, all up. First part of each of these. Ah, that's a short A sound. Short E. I. Oh. Okay? Never start with an L in your first one here, because you'll pull the L into it and you'll change it from A to ah. Now there is the ah sound, but we're not going to work with that. So the ah is the O. A, I, ah. Without showing your children the letters, I want you to work this week on the vowel sounds only. I want you to go buy some clay. The clay has to be all the same color, and it needs to be pliable. That means that when you roll something out in the clay, it's not ever going to stiffen up on you. This clay that I've got here is about 20 years old, because I used it to teach my grandchildren. Get about clay for, okay, get about, a couple of pounds of clay, maybe a little less. This was for the children that were dyslexic, and so we did use a lot of clay, and I will aim you towards that program if you need that. Now you'll notice at the bottom of the screen here, all the way down below me, there's a comment section. I want you to leave comments. You can mention how old your child is. You can ask questions. I'm going to read those comments, and I want you to give me as much as you can, because I need to know what you need to learn. So if I think, well, I've covered everything, and you go, oh, but the comments are the way for you to raise your hand and say, hey, teacher, cover this. So put those comments in. I'm so happy that you joined me, and I bet you can't wait to start teaching your child how to read. Remember to make it a fun time. Don't try to keep a schedule. Just do it whenever you and your child feels like doing it. If you miss a week, it doesn't matter. If you're both sick, don't teach at that time. Now, leave those questions down below, and I'll answer the questions either in the comment section here, or I will answer it in the next lesson. That lesson is going to show you how to introduce letters to your child. I'm going to show you how to use the clay, and I'm going to tell you how to teach the short vowel sounds. And then we'll make some words. Okay, goodbye for now, and remember that a parent or a grandparent is the child's best teacher. We want to raise giants, and you are well on your way to doing so.